What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Golf on Tap. We got a lot to break down on today's episode. TGL just wrapped up with their undoubtedly most successful match so far as Tiger Woods and Jupiter Golf Links shocks the world and breaks Uncle Tweeth Mitchell's heart as the Boston Common Golf Frogs take a tough L. We'll also be talking about first 4 weeks of the PGA Tour season, talk about Jordan Spieth, Scotty Scheffler making their return this week. Xander Schauffele still out due to a rib injury. Some other things involving the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Torrey Pines hosting the Genesis Invitational in the next couple of weeks. Lots of good stuff. If you're joining us right off the rip, make sure to jump on over to YouTube so you can interact with us in the comment section. I'm Jack Bushman, my partner in crime, Ross Baran, here with me, and Uncle Tweeth Mitchell. Thank you for your time, my man. It's been a little bit since we last chatted. I know it's tough night for you and your squad. How are you hanging in there down in Florida, my man?
Yeah, you guys are getting melancholy Uncle Tweeth tonight because I was really excited to come on and celebrate just a big ball frogs just stomping, and that didn't happen. We didn't rise to the occasion. I'll be the first to say that ball frog for life, not abandoning my guys, but there was no reason for that to go into overtime. There was no reason to even need the singles matches, and we let Tom Kim do it to us, and we're gonna have to regroup as a squad and get our shit together for next week.
Some people are saying Tiger carrying this Jupiter Lynx team to a victory tonight was more impressive than him winning the United States Open on a broken leg. Ross Baran, how you doing on this fine Monday evening, my friend, as Jupiter Lynx shocks the world?
I mean, it clearly the biggest shock in the history of TGL. Like, we are going to remember this forever, the day that Jupiter Leagues took down the Ball Frogs.
We got a bunch of check boxes today. First birdie, first victory, lot of good stuff for Jupiter Golf Links. But in all seriousness, fellas, TGL had their fourth match tonight. Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods going head-to-head. It was Rory's first appearance on TGL as he's finally in the United States, teeing it up on the PGA Tour at Pebble Beach for the first time this season. We'll be talking about Pebble Beach a little bit later down the road. Make sure to stay with us. But this felt like a match that TGL really needed tonight. We had a feeling, I think all of us knew the first couple of matches were going to do some big numbers because it's new. You get Tiger week 2, which I thought was really strategically well done by the TGL. Week 3, though, or the third match, we saw the numbers dip down below 700,000, a pretty substantial dip. And then for the match to go the way that it did tonight, especially considering how awful Tiger Woods, Kevin Kisner, and Jupiter Golf Links looked in their debut, for them to go toe-to-toe against Rory McIlroy, Tom Kim providing the fireworks, for it to go down the wire and actually go into extra time, like, this was exactly what TGL needed. And Ross, I know you had some concerns about this type of match, being provided on a weekly basis. And if this is kind of the level that it needs to be, there are some worries there. Tweeth, what are kind of your thoughts on TGL as a whole through the opening 4 matches? I know we're still early in this process. We're coming off of a big match here tonight. So I'm sure the vibes are a little bit higher than it's been the last few weeks, but take me through kind of your thoughts on TGL's unveiling and what this night meant for them in the league.
I think I'm of two minds about TGL, and I think I've kind of learned what the product is a lot over the last 4 weeks. I'm not sure I'm all the way in on the things that it needs us to take seriously, right? The golf holes and the scoring and the shot clock even. I might not be as in on that as a lot of people. But I'm really in on 2 things that we saw tonight. One, I'm in on the kind of absurdity element of it. So the more you get the hammer and the more you get some of the, they mixed in a hole that was just a remake of a hole they'd already done, but with lava. And I was like, yeah, all right, that's what I need. Give me video game holes, give me some absurdity. Yes. And then give me unexpected, the close battle when it's unexpected, when the hammer gets thrown and the player that's farther away chips it close. And when those kind of swings happen, I think I'm really in on that. And as long as it can do a little bit of absurdity and a little bit of electricity, I think it could be really, really good. And especially if it's just going to hang out on Monday night and Tuesday night, and it's going to be I likened it last week on our spaces to celebrity poker. It's it doesn't have to be champion. You don't have to give out a World Series of Poker bracelet, but there should be some fun hands and there should be some quips, and it shouldn't take itself too seriously. And I think if it can continue to do that, I'm really in on it. I think like my big reservation, apart from just like the formatting and the, like we got to get weirder with some of this stuff. My big reservation is I just don't like a lot of these players, to be perfectly frank. And like, even some of the ones I don't like I'm on record as being not a Tom Kim guy, right? Not my speed, not for me. He's not, that's not what I want out of golf. He was great tonight, and I will give him a ton of credit for being great. But the things I thought were great weren't necessarily the shouting at the crowd and the bravado. He just made great shots. And even when he didn't, like on the last hole in regulation, when he left it in the bunker, he hit it to a foot. And I thought like that is what, like TGL needs absurd format, great golf. And up to now we had gotten boring format, bad golf. And so like if we can get more weird with the format and get better with the golf, they're fine. I think they're learning how to putt on that weird green, like stuff like that. I'm kind of okay with it, and I think I can stay in on it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that poker comparison is actually pretty spot on there. And the way I've kind of pictured it so far, it's kind of like that Major League Baseball game that's on in the background, right? It's not going to be a slam dunk home run type of game night in and night out, but it's there because nothing else happens to be on at that point in time. And oh shit, we got a close match. It actually has the potential to be an epic type of finish. You got to keep in perspective though, that's not going to happen every single time. And that's kind of why I had that comparison to baseball, but I really like the online poker type of reference that you've kind of gone with, Tweeth. Ross, I'm kind of curious how you feel through these opening 4 matches and where your feelings are about TGL thus far.
I think you both hit it on the head where it has a spot. Like it has a spot in your weekly viewing calendar, whatever. Like as sickos, like we want to watch the golf, right? There's a Monday or Tuesday just spot on our calendar reserved every week. We're going to flip this on for a couple hours, watch some guys dick around. I do think that, Tweeth hit it perfect where you need the absurdity. You need, like, they create all these fantasy holes and stuff, and you need the guys to like actually buy into it on that. When it's the fantasy hole that has 3 fucking fairways because it's a 700-yard par 5, and then you can do the moon shape to the right or the moon shape to the left, or there's the 80-yard wide little like landing strip right down the middle that cuts the hole in half. Like they're going right and they're going left. No one is going down the middle. Like that hole is designed for you to fuck around and hit and go for that right down the middle. Like if they need to embrace and not just go play that the way you would play a normal hole on, Thursday through Sunday of a tournament. Like you need to embrace the absurdity that is there. You need to give that product out there. I think another thing that needs to be revamped probably for the second swing of this is going to be like next year, maybe take a look at who we're inviting to come play on these teams. Cause like, let's be honest, you are never, there's that. And like, you are never going to get anything like relevant or, clippable out of like some like Patrick Cantlay for TGL. You just are not. He's going to sit there with the mopey, dopey face like he always fucking has every single week, like watching paint dry. Like it's not going to get the people going. Like he's going to hit some good shots, whatever, but you're not going to get a reaction. You might get an occasional low 5, not even a high 5 as he walks back to his teammates. But like you need to kind of maybe reinvest in some of the personality you want in this. Like I think Savannah brought it up in Spaces a couple weeks ago. Perfect. Like you got people like Harry Higgs and Joel Damon out there that you put them on camera and they will suck up every fucking moment for you in that environment because that's just the type of people they are. So I think the roster probably needs to be reevaluated in the future, but also just you need to go with the audacity and buy into what some of these holes are. That this is a fantasy hole for a reason. Fucking play it like a fantasy.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that as well. The holes, they need, video game type. Give me a lava hole in one, like out there type of concepts that we don't see on a standardized golf course. This just needs to be completely different in that aspect. And I agree, some of the players, I talked to you before recording, Ross, that I think with having 24 guys, there's always going to be those couple that stink and they're just bummers. And I think the PGA Tour is in a little bit of a tough spot in terms of they want their big name guys out there first. I feel like off the rip, you can't. I do think there could be a possibility for, guys down the road, maybe to some more unhousehold type of names to join this thing if TGL does well. I think they just had to go with more household names off the rip. But I do agree, like, the players are what's really going to drive this thing home. And if you're a boring, stale, nonchalant type of guy out there, you're not going to have any interactions. And Patrick Cantlay, a perfect example of that. Like, if he's not playing good golf, there is nothing that Patrick Cantlay is out there for. He is providing this with absolutely nothing. So that's kind of something. Go ahead, Tweeth.
I was going to say, here's where, like, I hate it when people do this, like, here's what you got to realize thing. Because, like, the truth is we should want what we want, regardless of what the reality is, right? We should be able to say, I don't want Patrick Cantlay on my screen. He's boring. But the reality, and I'll be that guy, like, here's what you got to realize is the tour is having, and the tour and TGL are not the same thing, but they're
right.
They're entwined. So, like, let's realize here that the incentive is the tour is having trouble finding sponsors right now. Like, people are leaving. And what the tour can do for its sponsors is say, hey, like, you've got Cantlay on your roster. We're going to put him on TGL. And so you'll get those additional views if you sign back up. And there's like some leverage with those bigger players because the sponsors of the tournaments and the sponsors of those bigger players are kind of linked, right? And so, like, I think that's a reality that's really playing out behind the scenes that's going to keep us from getting some more interesting but lesser known dudes. I think the other reality is that, like I think the Joel Damon, Harry Higgs thing would be great, but, like, for how long, right? Like, that I do think that, like, some of the intrigue of those players gets lost pretty quick, and those guys, like, we think, oh, they're hilarious forever, and I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're great guys. Don't come after me, Higgs Legion or whatever. Sure, they're great, but, like, for how long? Like, how long can they really sustain? It's possible that we just think they're hilarious because we have such a brief look into their personalities, and that they would be as grating as Kisner is now if we had multiple hours a week with them. So, like, I think the intrigue has to come from, like we were talking about, the format. And can I make just, like, one pitch? Because I know the TGL course design people all listen to your show.
You got great ideas whenever you come on. So
here's an idea. And this is just when we were talking about video game stuff, and Ross, you were talking about the hole with 3 fairways and no one goes down the middle. Do this. The left fairway, it's snowing. The right fairway, it's raining and the wind is blowing 50. But down the middle, it's calm and sunny. Like, you can do that. We are not constrained at all by the constraints of the physical world. So, like, change the wind and the precipitation and the elevation. Hey, that one that's off to the right is actually at 6,000 feet elevation. So once you clear it, the ball goes farther.
Yeah.
Right. And the one, like you can do anything. So, like, the fact that we're getting golf holes that still look like golf holes a little bit is kind of like, come on, guys. Like, season 2, we need, like, some real ingenuity here.
I completely agree. TIO relief also tonight made me want to throw up. TIO relief at the TGL should not be.
No, ball frogs were entitled.
It's only because it's Captain Keegs.
Mm-hmm.
Also, one thing that really drives me insane is just the random other professional athletes interviews. Like, if you need other people to tell you how great something is, it's not that great. And
yeah,
we got to have new questions from SVP. He's asking, I swear, the same questions before the match. Tiger and Rory have been dreaming this up for years, and now it's finally here. I swear I've heard SVP say that before every single match. And I'm like, dude, we got to have some type of different questioning going on, different atmospheres. Even, like, I noticed tonight Roger Steele finally changed the introduction instead of, like, make some noise, which was getting real old. I don't know if anyone else felt the same way, but it's like, we got to switch things up here, not go with the same thing day in or match in and match out. And we're so new that we can be open to these types of changes, right? Like, you can't necessarily put your finger on what this TGL thing is, or, I mean, anything that's, 4 weeks into its start, whether it's a company, whether it's us as a podcast, like, you can't really fairly judge anything. So I feel like they should be open to trying all of these different things at its inception. I feel like that would only make the most sense. And I don't know how soon they're going to change these things. Like the hammer. The hammer's been an absolute nightmare in terms of the strategy. Tonight was an absolute joke. I mean, match could have been, it basically was lost because the hammer utilization was terrible. I feel like those are things that they got to be tinkering with as well over the next few weeks.
I know for sure, like with the interviews in during like the intermissions and stuff, like, okay, they sit and they talk to Mike Trout, like totally cool. Mike Trout, noted, plays golf, owns a fucking course, like sponsored with Tiger out in New Jersey. Totally fine. Makes sense. Great. Drake May does not need to be on my fucking TV right now. Just because he happens to be in the fucking building watching TGL tonight. Like, you could skip over that one, please.
And I feel like those guys are being thrown to the lambs as well because they don't know like what questions are coming their way. They're trying to pump it up, but like it's just hard in that type of setting in like a public interview. You're so on your toes and everything. It just makes for an awkward type of scenario. And finding the awkwardness through this, that's part of something starting up as well. So I think we got to like, and this is, I feel like for everyone out there, you got to reserve some judgment until we see more out of this thing. But I am encouraged by the niche that it can live in. I feel like it can be a thing. I don't know if you guys feel the same way long term. Like after tonight, again, you know what's capable, and it's not going to happen every week, but that needs to be in perspective as well. I think that will happen with time, if that makes sense.
Sure. And listen, if it can't be a thing, like we're going to find out. The economic reality is going to catch up to this, and we'll get 2 seasons of it. And it'll be like, hey, remember when they tried to do that weird screen golf thing? That was weird, right? So like, yeah, we'll find out if it can be a thing. But there is way, 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 way too much money riding on it for the PGA Tour itself, and for these like PE investors or whatever who decided this was going to be a hit to like consider abandon. Like, we're going to see this thing through. You guys are going to we're going to get playoffs. We're going to get season 2 no matter what. Like, buckle up. If you don't like it now, just strap in, guys. You're going to get a lot of this.
This is every Monday, Tuesday for the next 3-4 years to come, every winter. Just
right.
buckle in for it.
Yep. One thing I definitely did want to talk about, I know, Tweeth, you said you're not the biggest Tom Kim guy. He's not really like up your alley. I think one thing, though, that Tom Kim does exceptionally well, and this is something that Ross and I have talked on the show time and time again, it's if you are a guy who can show energy and can show fire and can play with passion, you have to do it. That's what I believe the PGA Tour is missing, and I know we'll go to the broadcast stuff and our thoughts on that here in just a minute, but whether it's TGL, whether it's regular PGA Tour events, they need more guys. And it's kind of like, again, not to bury the lead here, what Justin Thomas said in his letter, I'm not asking anybody to be who they aren't. But if you are one of those guys who can play well and bring that to the table at the same time, you need that, because that energy and that passion, to me, Tweeth, is what resonates with fans. Even if you like Tom Kim or if you don't, you recognize that passion. That's what I think we see in other sports, that fire when someone gets a first down, someone gets a big dunk. We don't see that out of 95% of the guys in golf. They make a 40-foot birdie putt and, it's just oh, thanks. Like, that's not relatable. That doesn't get anyone fired up. What Tom Kim was doing tonight was getting people fired up while also playing good golf. And I think that's the big thing. If you can provide that energy while playing good golf, you need to on the TGL and PGA Tour.
I think it's fair. I mean, like, to me, the issue is I don't feel like he's earned it, right? And so for me, it's like it's the third stringer who gets, catches a pass for a first down. It's the first catch all year, and he goes wild celebrating. And to me, it's like, come on, man, like, know your role a little bit. But you're right. Like, it's got to come from somewhere. And I'm a little bit of an old fuddy-duddy when it comes to this stuff, where I like the act like you've been there before energy. And so, like, to me, like, I get it, but I would rather that, like, I think Tom Kim himself could use that energy in service of the guys who've earned it and pump the team up. But it's like always kind of like this only child energy that's like really off-putting to me, where it's like, it's always like, look at what I did. And I just don't think Tom Kim has the resume to play the look at what I did game quite yet. So like, check back in 5 years, maybe, books a major or two and I'll feel differently. But like, I think it's just like a little, like, it's to me, it's unbecoming. But I agree with you. Like, it's got to come from somewhere, so it might as well come from the guy I don't like, and it can fire up, guys who are y'all's age.
I was going to say,
They need to fire up Uncle Tweeth, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, also hot take. Maybe that's why Cam Young doesn't necessarily play too well in TGA or TGL, because he still hasn't won on the PGA Tour, and he doesn't need his first professional victory to be TGL.
That's fair.
Would you, Tweeth, though, would you rather have more guys on the PGA Tour like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Would you rather have Tom Kim be the way that he is, or more people? I feel like having Tom Kim be the way that he is, even if it's not like the type of energy or what you want to see out of a golfer, or even if you don't think it's justified, I still feel like you'd rather have that and make it's almost like UFC, make them feel something, because if they feel nothing is worse.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna like him either way, so he might as well do something for y'all. You know, like,
there we go.
I get it. Like, the sport is probably better if he does that. It's just not for me.
What else have we got from TGL, fellas, through these opening 4 matches? Is there anything else that has caught your eye? Anything else that you've liked, didn't like? One thing in particular to me is I feel like the stats or the numbers, because I'm kind of a stat guy and I want to see like ball speed and I want to see the distance and the carry distance. I feel like that's not as prevalent for everybody on every shot as it should be. And I'm kind of splitting hairs here, but it is something that I wanted to bring up because, again, we're in this technology fueled era where we can have all these numbers and have this digital leaderboard and make things different. To not have that, to me, is a little bit disappointing. I'm sure there's some other like golf sickos who feel the same way. But is there anything else you guys want to bring up on TGL before we kind of turn the tides here?
Well, part of that is that like the data's wrong. You know,
true.
The sim is bad, and I think they kind of know that. And so,
thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
It's not good, and at this point, if I was full swing, like I would address it because it's actively like if I was a golf nut, right? The only people who buy their product are golf nuts, and if I'm watching this as me and I'm shopping for a simulator right now, that one is off the list. And so, like, I think they got to address it and be like, hey, it's not calibrated for the room. Like, we calibrated it for your experience in your garage. They're operating it at scale on this 180-foot screen or whatever, and it's not calibrated properly. And in the off season, we're going to work to calibrate it better because we see what you guys see. And I'm shocked they have not made that statement yet. What about you, Ross?
I was going to say the sim definitely off, but then I just don't understand like the miss for when they hit it into the screen and they're showing it take off. How hard is it to have the sim auto project the number and start counting as it's in the air? Like the second it hits the screen, all right, it hit the screen. We know it's at, 39 yards back when it hits the screen. Starts at 39, and you watch it just automatically jump 40 to 50, 60, and it ends at 331 at the top of the screen when it ends on like the actual view for the player. Like minor adjustment, tiny thing, but like people can see the carry. Like that's probably the biggest one people want to know is how fucking far did that go? Not just it's the stupidest, littlest thing.
Tweeth, I think that's a really good point you brought up though. And I feel like the players maybe are a little bit aware of that situation now.
Very, very aware.
Because those first 2 weeks, you heard comments from the players, and these guys, man. They are as dialed gets with their numbers. They know how far the ball goes when it leaves their club face. And there was a couple of different instances where guys were like, what is going on here? So that is definitely something.
Tiz told Tom Kim tonight it can't read a fade. They kept begging for it to cut. He said that. I mean, it was on the mic. He goes, I don't think it can read a fade. And I'm like, it's one of those things where like some of it's going to slip through, like but they're well aware. And, Tiger is probably a part owner of Full Swing, I think is the deal, is probably dragging those devs through the mud right now and calls on every Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning. Like, guys, like what can we do? Yeah. Who can debug this software to make it actually work? Because it's not becoming, like it's not gonna make him any money.
Yeah, the cuts were not happening tonight. A lot of misses left from everybody. So, the simulator, the data reading has not been up to snuff thus far, and that's definitely something they want to dial in to take the seriousness of it to another level, I feel like, because if you're not getting accurate numbers, it's kind of like, what kind of golf product are we putting out here? It's just a little bit of a guessing game at that point in time. But My final thoughts, though, to just kind of tie a bow on this, I said it a little bit earlier, but again, anything through 4 weeks, 4 matches, whatever it may be, I think we just need to give it a little bit of a greater sample size to truly understand what it is. I'm encouraged about what it could be. I think it is going to be, the Monday, Tuesday type of filler that's just on every now and then. If it hits a home run, great. If not, that's kind of the way the game goes, because ultimately, guys, and I think this is one thing we lose perspective of too as golf fans. We're all such diehard golf fans. We love this sport. And sometimes I think we forget that golf just is never going to be as big as the other sports.
Yeah.
And I think golf fans lose sight of that all the time. And like, you see the ratings going down and it's like, well, actually, the ratings were never like fucking electric in the first place. It was just Tiger Woods. You know what I mean? So it's never like golf is going to be the creme de la creme of sports. But if this thing survives, honestly, like, I think that's just a win in alone of itself.
Sure.
But speaking of surviving, the PGA Tour, first 4 weeks of the season.
Great transition.
Feels like it barely survived, fellas, because there has just not been a lot of juice through these opening 4 weeks. And I really feel that's a shame, because we have gotten some really good tournaments other than the American Express. That thing was kind of awful. But Torrey Pines this past week, you get a -8 type of winner, something we see like outside of majors, maybe 1 or 2 events a year on the PGA Tour, winning score in single digits. I love seeing players get tested like that. We have a tight bunched leaderboard. You have a really good finish at the Sony to round things out, like an incredible finish to the Sony Open. Nick Taylor chips in, and it feels like it's just not catching the steam that it should be catching for these type of tournaments. When it's about to roll into some signature events, we get some actually good golf courses coming up. And I feel like there's a multitude of different reasons for that, and I'm sure we all have our different perspectives. But Tweeth, I know this is something you texted Ross in particular that you wanted to talk about on the show. Give me kind of your thoughts about the PGA Tour not having any steam right now through the opening 4 weeks.
The problem is that the season starts at least 3 different times, right? It starts in the fall, right? With the what's now the fall swing or whatever it's called, the FedEx fall, right? Now they got that it starts then, right? The points are done and we're going to see who makes points. Starts again at the Century. And like, now that tournament isn't 35 dudes and it's a full 80 person field, that event feels totally, I mean, it feels like a $20 million nothing event, where Rory still won't go to it, and then it starts again sort of in a trickle as people start filing in. The AT&T will help because it's got a huge purse. Waste Management will help a little bit. What used to be Riv and is going to be Torrey again this year helps. And that's kind of like, to me, like the genesis is the third start of the season. And so we're kind of stuck in this weird, like, second false start situation. And I don't know that there's a great fix to it. Like, honestly, like maybe the Century has to go and that fall thing just becomes a longer period. I would hate that. I actually really like the Century and I think it's great. I think it should be just winners again, but whatever. But like, I just think we're like mired in this start, stop situation. And I know these guys have commitments. Rory's got to go to Dubai. And, I know Scheffler cut his hand all up and that was kind of a wrench nobody saw coming. And Xander's got this rib injury or whatever it is. But like, that stuff is going to happen. And these guys are telling us constantly, let us play a better schedule for us. And what they mean is not just let me play 14 events and that be it. What they're saying is let me play events that are like, think about all the other sports. Football goes like July now to January if you're lucky. And they get 6 months off. And like golfers are telling us, the big names anyway are saying, hey, I want more time off and I want it all to happen all at once. And that's why they don't go to these things. And so like, to me, like as a golf fan, I would be willing to give them that and just say, hey, from East Lake to Riviera, stay home. If you want to play Century, great. That would be a great trip for you and your wife to take in the middle of your 8-month or 6-month vacation or whatever that is. But like, stay home, take your time off, because once we get to Riv, you're going to go. Like, we're going to have back-to-back signature events, and we're going to have some of these stretches where you play 4 or 5 weeks in a row, 6 weeks in a row, because there's majors and we're not going to move Harbor Town and we're not going to like give you a ton of time off. and we're going to really market the golf season from basically Valentine's Day to Labor Day, and that's it. And I would sign up for that as a golf fan. I would be very into that. But I think there's a real lack of identity to when the season starts. And we're bearing the brunt of it in both the unwatchability of some of these events, and we should talk about pace of play. But part of the reason they're not watchable is that like there are no stories for them. And if we really made these events, like if we said, hey, like the top 40, like don't come, we would know what the stories were. But instead we get these broadcasters are like, no, the story is Tony Finau because he's the name at the event. And then Finau gets wiped out and misses the cut. And you're like, oh shit, we got to figure out how to talk about Walker, Danny Walker. I don't even know his first name. Like loved watching him play. The joggers were bad. But like I thought he could play. Sorry, I'm unfamiliar with your game, man. Shaq meme. But like, but they got to figure out how to tell stories on the fly because of this lack of identity. So anyway, I know I'm like rambling a little bit, but I just think it's like such a bad, like the whole idea of trying to walk this middle ground is the root of all of the tour's problems. And this is another example of that. They're just trying to walk between raindrops instead of saying, let's just let this be a glorified Corn Ferry season.
Yeah. And I think, not rambling at all, by the way, you brought up a lot of great points in there. And I think it's funny that you said, we don't know when the season starts, because as someone who I do a betting show with Joey Ricotta here at On Tap Sportsnet, and I don't know how many times on that show I've said, like, we'll be doing an episode for, Torrey Pines. The season doesn't really start until they hit Torrey Pines. The season doesn't start until Riv. The season doesn't start until the week before the Masters. Like there's right. So many of those type of statements, and you're exactly right. And I think another problem of this too, Tweeth, is the season's just too goddamn long. They're stuck on this like WWE type circus of we just got to do this every week in a different city. People are going to tune in because they know it's on every single week. That's like, I feel like the mindset that they're warped into, and it's just too long, because in the reality, I feel like golf season, there is no way in hell golf season should start until football's over, guys. Like, no way in hell. No one cares about these golf tournaments because football's on. And the PGA Tour acts like the conference championships is so much bigger than the rest of any other week of football, right? Like they move the Farmers to Thursday to Saturday to get rid of the conference championship on Sunday. Side note, every Sunday is the same exact thing. It's not just the conference champions. People are going to tune into football, especially playoff football, over golf. And you can't really hammer home your storylines or your main points or draw up interest for this event because it's not the main sporting event that's going on at that point in time. And I feel like it's just such a miss by the PGA Tour because, guys, think about the dog days of summer when it's, June, July, and there is nothing on besides baseball. Like, that's where the PGA Tour has to make its living. When nothing else is on, we're the primetime show. But guess what? When football's on, you're just going to have to fall in line, man. And I'm the biggest golf sicko there is. And I'm still going to choose football, right? It's just the nature of the beast. I feel like the season is way too long. Tweeth, you said it. There's way too many starts to the year. No one really even knows when things are getting going. And I feel like, the casual golf fan probably tunes in around Augusta. They see the FedEx Cup standings, and it's like, wait, how the fuck did these guys get here? I don't even know the season started. Right. Like, there's so much that's being, like, left untold because it's not the primetime spot, and golf won't be that primetime spot unless nothing else is on. So I'm in agreement with you, Tweeth. Like, if it sadly meant the PGA Tour has to cut some of these tournaments and go to a shorter schedule, I think that sucks, but like I feel like that is what has to happen because playing 46 weeks a year is just ridiculous.
I'm not sure even that's what has to happen. I think you have to find a way to bifurcate it and they're kind of doing this, right? So like, this is not new. There's the Tour A and Tour B, right? There are just two different tours. And the problem with Tour A and Tour B is if Tour B, the non-signature events, the mule events, whatever, if Tour B tells Tour A, you're welcome to play, which makes sense for the sponsor, then there are still just one tour, right? That's kind of like, and so I think what you have to do is say like, hey, if you're in the top 50 at the end of the season or whatever, you're going to get into all the sticky events. You're already in all the majors, but like, you can't come to the Sony. You're not invited. and there are 4 sponsored invites or 6 sponsored invites, that if you have a spot, if you're sponsored by Sony and they want you there, they can invite you. If Scotty Scheffler says, I really want to play the Sony, I love Wildeye, and they go, hell yeah, we'd love to have Scotty, get him there. That's fine. Use one of the invites on him. But like, don't let those Tour A guys who earn their way into all the SIGI events also go try to scoop up money from the guys who are fighting their way on. And now just have, like a real line of demarcation between the 2 events. And now it's like, hey, the stories we're telling at the Tour B events are, can Justin Lauer win his way onto Tour A for the rest of the season? That kind of thing. And not, why is Cam Young here? Which is the story that we get told now, right? Which is like, hey, this guy's a top 50 player who's only here because he knows he hasn't won yet, and this is his best chance to win. And like, that right there is the real difference. Is like, you don't have to kill the events, but go ahead and let those guys play for less money because they're there to play for FedEx Cup points so they can get onto Tour A anyway. And save those sponsors a little bit of money so you can keep them. And then if Sony's upset and says, oh, we don't want to be a Tour B event, say, that's great. The price of admission onto Tour A is $20 million purse. Come on. And make it so that sponsors want to go to the PGA Tour events and want to sponsor them, because right now the sponsors don't know what their event is, and that's why they don't want to pay the money. Yeah. And that's why you're going to lose farmers, right? And so tell farmers, hey, we're going to let you off the hook for $8 million, and you won't have Scotty at your event, but if you want to keep having this event, we'd love to have you, and it's going to be cheaper than it's ever been for you. But we're going to tell different stories at this event. Yeah. You're going to get a hell of a lot of Harry Higgs, and you're not going to get a ton of Xander Schauffele. And that's what we're going to do with your event. And and if people want to watch it, they're going to watch it. So I just think, like, if the tour had a little like humility, they just need to like have a Jerry Maguire moment and say, like, hey, there needs to be less money on these events, and so that we can make these other events valuable. And let's be PGA Tour A and PGA Tour B.
And let me be clear, I'm not like advocating for throwing away like PGA Tour events. I was just, you're the idea guy. This is what we bring you in for, Tweeth. You got the outside the box type of thoughts. And I'd love for the PGA Tour to not have to cancel events or anything like that. But I think something has to change in terms of, like you said, if you don't want to change the schedule, you have to tell different stories, and you have to make it a clear division between the two, or else you're just getting this mixed type of shit show and no one knows what's going on.
Yep.
That, and also maybe look at the way you line up your signature events, for the fact that we're going to burn through 3 of the 8 during the fucking football playoffs where no one's going to pay attention.
Insane.
Yeah, that is insane. And I think, well, I'm not going to bury the lead on that. I want to go to the broadcast next, because the broadcast is a huge part of this issue as well, and telling the story. They're the ones who are responsible for being the storytellers. And as we talked about before recording, guys, it feels like for really the first time, everyone is recognizing that there's a broadcast issue. The fans have known it for years on end, but even the players are coming out and addressing it. Justin Thomas gave a memo to the players a couple of weeks ago. We heard Dottie Pepper bring it up pretty clearly on the broadcast that there's just a lack of respect in the professional game for your playing competitors, for the broadcast sponsors, for the fans out there. Fellas, Torrey Pines took 6.5 hours to finish that final round on Saturday. I could not believe so. I had to help one of my good buddies move into his new apartment on Saturday morning, and it was a bitch, fellas. I could not believe that by the time I got done, started at 9 o'clock in the morning, we finished at probably like 4. I couldn't believe the final pairing was on like 10. That had to be the slowest that I've seen in a while.
3 hours in golf.
And what's crazy is I was just on the show a week ago with Ross talking about how terrible that final round of the Amex was for the exact same reason. It was like a 6.5 hour round out there, and everyone's starting to figure out that this is bad for all parties involved. I'm not the idea guy, Tweeth. You're the idea guy. We bring you on the show for these ideas. I don't necessarily know what needs to happen to the broadcast, but it's just become so stale, and there's no good stories being told. What are your thoughts on the broadcast?
Let me solve slow play for you first, because that's like to me, that's like one of the easiest ones to get. And I know people are going to say, well, there's too many players on the course and it gets backed up, and it's not necessarily the guys who are playing slow aren't necessarily the problem. They're waiting on the guys who are backed up by the guys who are slow. And I just think, like, we know when a group is out of position, right? That's something we already do in the PGA Tour. We already follow groups. When they're out of position, they get put on the clock. If they get a bad time while they're on the clock, they get fined. Those fines went down this year because for whatever reason. But that system is already in place. And the tour just doesn't have the cojones to turn the money into strokes. And so, like, start publishing that list and start giving guys stroke penalties when they're out of position. If that creates a backup, I'm not saying put the guys who are backed up on the clock because they're not out of position, right? They're still within 300 yards of the group in front of them. But if you're going to have as many dudes on the course as you have with as little daylight as we have, they've got to play faster. And I'm not an advocate for a shot clock. Like, I actually don't think it works all that well on TGL even. But, like, I don't feel like we need to. Hey, Red. Yeah, I'm
sorry that I missed this earlier. I get you poor swing simulators today.
I'm actually not an advocate for a shot clock on the tour because I just don't think it's necessary. I think, like, and shout out to Red, I think Liv has kind of like done this where, hey, if you're walking with a group and they're out of position, get the rules official over there, start clocking dudes and give them stroke penalties. Like, give Liv a ton of credit for that because they realize this is a pain point for our viewing audience, and we're not going to be the league that is associated with this pain point. So the initial answer doesn't need to be to change anything other than add stroke penalties to the equation and be serious about it. Like, that solves that. Now, as far as making the broadcast interesting and telling stories, I'll just say my dude, Justin Thomas, who is, as many loyal listeners of this podcast knows, probably one of my 2 or 3 least favorite people alive. I applaud him for trying to find a solution to the boring story problem. I disagree with him that the solution to the boring story problem is more boring golfers. I don't think he's the solution. I don't want to hear a 15-second interview, and I want to expose what he asked for as what it is, which is convenient cover for the tour and its golfers to avoid addressing the real problem with their storytelling. Because what he wants to do is do safe, pre-vetted, uninteresting 15-second interviews as a way to say, we're listening, we heard you, and we're trying, without actually trying to do anything. And the anything they would need to try to do is put the cameras on different golfers. Like, just go find the cut line on Friday. This is something that everyone connected to golf has said. Go do that. Go find the stories of, the up and coming golfers, or even just your reliable veterans who like that are in the hunt, that are in the thick of it. Like, everyone knew looking at Saturday, I keep saying Sunday, Saturday's leaderboard at Torrey, that the winner was going to come from that final group, right? So we have a camera with that group, right? Who are the stories of the next group down? Ludwig is clearly ailing and sick, right? You want to follow that? Tell that story, right? Did anybody mention he's probably got a goddamn norovirus, like following him around? No, they're just watching him spray shots into the ocean saying, like, man, Ludwig's real out of sorts, whatever. It's like, it's just like an unserious, and by the way, CBS, way, way better than NBC. So, like, kudos to CBS for, like, doing what I thought was an admirable job with the slog that was. But I just think, like, they got to put the cameras on different golfers and, like, get serious about, who they should, on the fly. Who's great at this? Reality TV producers, right? They follow the little cast of whatever show around, The Bachelor, or I watched The Challenge on MTV. It's one of my favorite shows. It's been one of my favorite shows for 20 fucking years. They always find the fights, right? They always find a way to craft a narrative out of this. And granted, it's pre-taped and edited, and they're doing that, but they can do it on the fly. They can tell you, hey, the story that's developing is like, this guy doesn't like this girl, and they're going to have it out or whatever. But, like, you can find that story on the fly, and they got to be nimble enough to move the camera to where the charge is coming from. And, like, I didn't see a ton of Sam Stevens coming up the leaderboard on Saturday. I heard a lot about it. Didn't see a ton of shots until he was 3 or 4 holes from finish, right? Because you can't move the camera quick enough to get over to that group. That's a problem, right? So they got to get nimble with where the cameras are. I do not need the Justin Thomas 15-second interview. No, thank you. I certainly don't need it if it's going to be pre-vetted and pre-answered and rehearsed. Like, no. Save me from that and deliver me into a world where I get to see more golf shots from where the action actually is on the golf course. Please, for the love of God.
Yeah, it's similar to the Billy Horschel kind of debate that he had with Ryan French over at Monday Q. Like,
right. I
applaud you guys for recognizing this problem and, like, trying to do something different, but your solutions are not solutions. I promise you. They're not going to be the thing that gets the PGA Tour across the threshold and now tells a better story because we got a 15-second interview of what Justin Thomas is trying to do today.
Right.
I agree. You got to show more golf shots. And in the year 2025, there is no excuse to not have cameras all over the place. There is no excuse to be missing golf shots, to not be able to tell a story, for someone to be surging up a leaderboard and to not be able to hype and gas that up. There is no reason for that. And I think, too, it's just the way the PGA Tour has gone about things for years, and they think it's okay, and they don't recognize that they actually have that issue. And I do think, again, they're starting to recognize it a little bit better, and I think that's step one at the very least. And I think ESPN Plus has been doing a better job in terms of their main feed. It's been really good. I do still absolutely fucking hate having to jump from ESPN Plus to Golf Channel to CBS. But I will give ESPN credit for they've been showing some better coverage of players on the cut these last couple of weeks. It feels like they're getting the memo about that, at least a little bit more. And also, this is a minuscule type of thing, but Pebble Beach this week, Spyglass Hill, they're getting Shot Tracker for the first time at that course. Like, it's 2025. You need to be able to track golf shots. You should be able to watch every golf shot out there. There's only 18 holes. If you have 2 courses, there's 36 holes. Get 36 fucking cameras. You guys have the money to do this. There is no way.
Yeah, they don't though. That's it. They don't. They may not have the money for that.
You don't think so?
I don't know. They do it to players, and it's. I think it's a phenomenal expense. Thank you for shouting out the ESPN Plus broadcast though, because Uncle Tweeth's real life nephew works on that broadcast. So congrats to my guys over at PGA Tour Live running that ESPN Plus broadcast. It is sick. It has been great this year.
And that's one thing I wanted to bring up too is, Rick Gaiman, he does Rick Run Good. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Tweeth, but he posted last weekend as the American Express was going down. Imagine if this Eagles-Rams game broadcast was starting in the middle of the third quarter. That's what's happening to the PGA Tour. But the PGA, I forget who it was from PGA Tour Live, one of the guys responded and said, we're here, we're doing the coverage, and we appreciate you for doing your job, but the PGA Tour as a whole needs to make this process less hair pulling. And there, not only is it not a thing in any other sport, guys, it is not a thing in any other aspect of entertainment where you have to change the channel 3 times to maintain the entire coverage. Please tell me a TV show, a movie, like that is not a thing in any other facet of television entertainment.
Yeah, they did a bad deal with the broadcast partners, and they did it full well knowing what was going to happen.
Too much money. I mean, at
a time when they really needed it.
Yeah.
Literally, I think it was last week, the Golf Channel posting happy 30th birthday to us. What do you think of when you see this logo? And I just reposted, not actually showing golf.
Yeah.
You have a golf channel. You have a golf channel. It would be like if NFL Network wasn't streaming football if none of the other channels had it on. It's like, what is your purpose here?
Right.
And I don't understand how, the LPGA Tour, the Champions Tour, how can you look in the mirror and actually think that those are doing okay numbers or that they're going to do better numbers than the PGA Tour? I'm so confused by that mindset that's still going on.
Yeah. Champions Tour needs to just disappear from broadcast. I don't need to see that. No one needs to see that. The tour should not exist. Get Laz on there sometime. Tell you why Champions Tour should not exist. He'll talk for an hour on that.
Oh, I was in that space when you guys had Garrigus on there. He's like, I'm sorry, Garrigus. I know this is directly talking about you, but the Champions Tour is going to go.
I hope he makes $20 million on the Champions Tour if it's going to exist, but it shouldn't exist.
Completely agree. One thing I also wanted to bring up, not to, did you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about on the broadcast or the pace of play? I completely agree, Tweeth. The only way to actually solve this is to stroke fucking guys. Nothing else is going to make them change. And if I was a player,
just embarrass them. That's it. It's like the way you solve any social problem. Just embarrass the people who do it, and then there you go.
I did at one point want to suggest, actually, when they get put on the clock, you gotta do the full embarrassment where literally every group starts normal. If you are given a warning about your time during the round, whatever, that's your warning. If the official comes back again and now says you are on the clock, I actually want a shot clock, except I want it to be like the NFL down marker.
You got to look
And
at it now.
they walk behind the group, and that shit starts counting down just digitally behind them on the group. And that way, when it gets down to like 5 seconds, I want the gallery to jump in and start the 5, 4, and like make Patrick Cantlay fucking shank one off into the water because he can't handle it.
I saw someone suggest the caddies should have to start wearing like neon bibs if you're a star player. That's a good one.
That's exactly the kind of thing that's like that would do it. It's like, oh, hey, you're on a slow bag. Like here, we have a different color bib for you because you're going to start the next round on the clock.
I like that too.
It's exactly the right kind of thing. And like Ross loved the idea if those players played in silos, but there are 2 other guys in that group where it's not their fault.
Definitely true. Definitely true. Some weird injuries going on with the PGA Tour early on in this season that I think hasn't really been talked about enough. And partially that's because football is still going on. Golf is not the main talking point of the sports world. Never really is. But we just had a lot of weird injuries. We got Scotty Scheffler slicing his hand, making ravioli on Christmas dinner. We got Xander Schauffele with a rib injury, which I can't say I've heard.
That he played through it the century because there was $20 million on the line and decided he was too to keep going.
Yes, he did admit today that it happened during the end of the 2023-2024 season, so he definitely knew about it going to the old century. Too good of a paycheck to pass up, Tweeth.
Yeah. Guaranteed money. You get money for finishing 80th. Might as well show up.
Victor Hovland was out there with a fucking crooked toe because the paycheck was so good. Stubbed his toe on the side of his bed. Yep. He's got a broken toe. A lot of weird stuff going around on the PGA Tour. But Tweeth, I wanted to ask you in particular about Scotty Scheffler, as he is going to be making his 2025 season debut this week at Pebble Beach. A hand injury for a golfer like Scotty Scheffler, who's as good with finesse shots as he is around the green, so dialed in with his irons and off of the tee. Do you think people should be talking about this a little bit more, or do you feel like there shouldn't be many concerns because Scotty Scheffler is just a different breed?
I'll say this, as a person who probably shouldn't gamble on sports anymore after tonight, but still might. I'm not going to bet on Scotty Scheffler until I see that the hand is not bothering him. However, I expect to see that in 2 holes. And I don't think he would come back if it wasn't totally cleared up. I don't think he's not the guy who's going to show up and play just because it's a big purse. Like,
definitely not.
Straight. If we know anything about Scotty Scheffler, it's that he has enough money, and that is not the reason to show up at the event. So if he's there, I'm going to say I believe him. And I believe that he's healed. And I believe that he's at full strength. And there's 0 reason to believe that he's not going to show up in the exact same form he left us, as the best ball striker on the planet, as the only guy who people are afraid of out there. And so, like, I fully expect to see that. And I think that, God, I think would it be great for golf if he took a little step back toward the field? Like, maybe, but I think he's just going to go start killing dudes again. And I don't know if he's going to win this week, but I just, like, it would shock me. I'll just say this. It would shock me if we made it to the Masters and he didn't get a W at some point. Like that, there's a win in there somewhere for him. And hell, might as well be this week, right? So, yeah, I think he's fine. I do think that some of these injuries are a little suspicious, and there's a chance that people just want a little more time off, like we've been talking about, and maybe they're not all that bad, and maybe it's just like, it's just not perfect. I'm going to, like, chill out for a little bit. But, yeah, I think there are probably some dudes out there that are injured and playing through it, too. I'm not sure if that's what's happening to Max Homa right now, or if he just if it turns out Cobra clubs aren't any good. But
I forgot to bring up Homa during TGL. I forgot to bring him up.
I'm just going to give him an out. He might be injured. He also, the thoughts and prayers to Max's family, because they may, I think they've been affected by the fires. So that's probably on his mind, too. So fair enough there. But yeah, like, I think there's probably a lot of injury going around right now, and I fully respect the dudes who know that they have real shit to fight for later in the season for sitting it out. But I just think Scotty doesn't come back unless he's healthy. And so if you already have money on Scotty, I think you're safe. I'm not going to be the guy who walks out on that limb first, but I'm not throwing up any warning signs for people who are out there.
Yeah.
I was going to say your opinion, coming off of injury, actually returning in general. Jordan, do you think we're going to get any relevance of what Jordan used to be again? Because I've long been an advocate that Jordan was way more hurt than we had let on for a very long time. And last year, when I first started with Jack, me and Jack had side conversations where I just kept saying Jordan needs to shut it down. Like it is beyond apparent that the shots that he is the textbook figure for, he is not hitting right now. And that was last January, me saying shut it down. And then finally in August, he comes out and is like, oh yeah, I basically had like a full reconstructive surgery on my wrist now. Do you think we're going to get Jordan in any type of form like he was prior to this? I actually went on a limb to say I think Jordan will pick off an event later in the summer.
If you've ever had like a wrist injury or a knee injury or one of those like where it's like you kind of use it all the time, like they don't get better until you make them get better, right? There is no knee brace that just makes the knee injury good. It's staying the hell off it, icing it, like doing what they tell you to do, and just like saying, I'm going to take the next 6 weeks and let it get better. If you ever had tennis elbow, right? It doesn't get better on its own. You got to take time off, right? Wrist injury like that. So the other thing about them, though, if you've ever had one of those injuries, is once they're better, they're kind of better. Like they don't tend to nag once they're actually healed. And if he had that surgery and the docs are saying it's healed and he's swinging pain-free, like I believe it. I think that's likely. So I love that. I mean, you were one of the first people I remember saying, hey, this dude's like, something's really wrong. I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to rush back either. But if he was ever going to rush back, this is the event he would rush back for. It's the AT&T. It's his, I don't know if he said it's his favorite course, but it's clearly one of the courses he plays best at. So I'm on wait and see mode on Jordan, but I will give you this. If he's healed, if he's swinging pain-free, and that's true, you'll know this week. And if we see that this week, I 100% agree with you that like the only thing that explains the Jordan lull over the last couple of years is injury, because that dude is too like gifted, just flat out. I mean, like, pardon the comparison, but he's like as close as we have to Lee Trevino, a guy who just like moves the ball with his mind.
Yeah.
And so like, if he's back and if there's not something physically keeping him from being great, I expect to see greatness. And it would not surprise me at all to see him win a big tournament.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with Ross, and a big reason I feel that way too is something Ross and I brought up many times on the show last year when talking about Jordan being so bad with his irons and so bad around the green. He was driving the golf ball like he never has. Further, more straight. Like that was usually an Achilles heel for Jordan Spieth, and he really weaponized that last year, but wasn't able to take advantage of that with his second shots because of the wrist problem. If he's able to drive like that, and I'll definitely be monitoring his driving numbers through these first couple of starts. If he's driving like that, I definitely think it's Jordan's capable to go and pick up a win later on in the year. I do agree. Like I'm probably not expecting it to come this early. I do think he's going to need those reps, and AT&T is, a spot that he was going to come back for, with that being a sponsor of his. He's here year in and year out. Even when this wasn't an elevated event, he was one of the few guys that would come in every single year. But I do think I'm thinking highly of Jordan Spieth going into this year if those driving numbers remain the same. As far as my thoughts on Scotty Scheffler, I think it would be a mistake for anyone to think that he's going out there and just getting reps before the Masters. Like, this guy is a competitor and he loves winning. And I agree, Tweeth. He's going to nab something before the Masters because it doesn't matter whether it's a lower tier event. This guy just wants to win. He wants to beat everybody at all times. I'm not going to go and bet it this week at plus 500 in his first week back. I don't even know if I'll ever get on it because I didn't bet on Scotty Scheffler last year and he was on like the heater of all heaters. So we'll see what winds up happening with Scotty and what impact his hand has as he makes his first start this week. We didn't talk yet about Torrey Pines hosting the Genesis Invitational. This was something that Ross and I mentioned on the show last week. Hadn't officially been confirmed at that point in time, but everyone basically knew it was going to be Torrey Pines. I would have rather had it be Torrey Pines than TPC Scottsdale 2 consecutive weeks. That sounded like that was another option that was up there on the table. There were some rumors of maybe having it at the Pete Dye Stadium course at PGA West, where they hold 2 of the 4 rounds of the American Express. I know some other people threw some options out there, Tweeth. What were your kind of thoughts on the PGA Tour ultimately electing to move the Genesis to Torrey Pines and having a tournament there 2 times in 3 weeks? Would you have liked to see them go somewhere else, or did you think this was the best option?
I mean, there are no good options, right? Like, you got to think, like, it would be great to say, hey, we're going to go play it somewhere really cool. Like, well, we're going to, there's any shortage of cool golf courses in the state of California. But like, those places can't just gear up to host a 4-day PGA Tour event at a moment's notice. So like, kudos to Torrey Pines and the municipality of the greater San Diego La Jolla area for figuring that out. Like, I think that's great of them, and I hope that they get something out of it. I hope that the state of California gets something out of it. I hope that they redirect a significant amount of these funds to fire relief. Like, that was the case for keeping in California, and I'm glad that they did. It does, however, change the profile of player that you're thinking about that wins the Genesis, because Riv and Torrey are not similar. And one of the things I like about the Genesis, that I really, really like about it, which is why I think of it as the beginning of the season, is a lot of different kinds of players can win there. And Torrey's not like that, I don't think. It'll be interesting. Like, I hope they get better weather than they did this week. Not that I didn't like seeing a near to par winner, but that field, I want to see that field just punish a golf course if that's what we're going to do, right? And so, like, I hope they get better weather. I hope that there can be more players in the mix, and we can get a lot of like the names that you want to see win an event like that. But just an awful spot for the Tour to be in. From a golf course perspective, I would have preferred to see Scottsdale twice in a row, just because I like that golf course better. But yeah, 6-1 after the other. I like the idea of it staying in California, and I just think it's like such a huge feather in the cap of Torrey and that local area that they're able to just sort of gear up and say, hey, I know we had tee times for that weekend. We're going to have to reschedule those guys. I know it's going to be a logistical nightmare. We're going to have to do it. We're going to have to get the tournament agronomy staff back out here to make the course play right. And I hope they take the opportunity to zhuzh it up a little bit and make some changes and say, hey, we're going to play one of these par fours like way shorter, or we're going to do some things we didn't do 3 weeks ago, because we don't want to play the exact same South course twice. I hope they take the opportunity to trick the South course up a little bit and make it kind of fun. I think that would go a long way. But yeah, I mean, what do you do, right? Just absolutely no good options. And it'd be great if you could just be like, oh, put it at Bel Air. But like, you can't host the tour event there on 3 weeks' notice. That's not how that works. So, like, is what it is. It'll be interesting to see, but it does change how I think about who's going to win it. And that to me is such a sad thing, because Riviera gives you an infinite number of options of types of players who can win, and Torrey gives you a very narrow bandwidth of options of types of players that can win. I will say that Ludwig is going to win it, though, because he's going to not have the norovirus, and he's just going to go do what he was going to do anyway had he been healthy this last weekend. So if you don't think I'm picking Ludwig and want him done that week, Ross, you better think differently.
Hey, I did it because I had for sure thought that this was going to be the week with the less loaded field there. I thought like this was a runaway, and going into Friday, that was very clear. And then he shows up on the first tee, doubled over and like puking, and I was like, oh no.
It's coming out both ends. He's probably wearing a diaper to get through that last round. Like, no.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't going to win.
So just, again, just like my Max Grazeman takes, just all-time bad beat is that Ludwig is just going to get neurovirus in the middle of leading a goddamn tournament.
Yeah.
I think Ludwig shot 79 on Sunday, man. Like, something's wrong.
He went from he shot like 12 over combined for the next 2 rounds after having a 3-shot lead going into the third.
Yeah, just tough for him, man.
Healthy Ludwig could shoot better than that doing the Ross, one-handed from 150 in thing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to be 12.
Right. Yeah, the PGA Tour was in a real tough spot, though, and I don't think there was going to be like some perfect solution, and they had to do the best with what they had. I was ultimately fine with the decision. I do agree, though, with you, Tweeth. Like, what we've seen from the South Course in particular these last few years, it's just driving distance, go and bomb it. If you can't bomb it, you really don't have a chance there. And that's kind of the disappointing part about it to me. As an elevated event, though, you're probably going to get those type of guys. I mean, I guess it's a little bit different at Riv, but elevate, it's a little bit tricky. But I was okay with the decision ultimately. I was really happy, though, that they went 4 rounds at the South Course. If they were going to do it, I don't think you go to the North Course for one of those 4 rounds. I'm interested to see how they are going to go about it, though, in terms of like the fairway rough. Are they going to try to make it really tough and have a similar tournament that they did 2 weeks ago? Are they going to go a kind of different route? Will be interesting to see with what they wind up going with. But yeah, I was okay with the decision to move it to Torrey Pines. There wasn't much they could really do, but we got Pebble Beach this week, fellas.
Yeah, we
This
do.
is when the season starts, is when they go to Pebble Beach.
That's right. That's when it starts, apparently.
Second of 8 signature events on the PGA Tour schedule. We basically got everyone in the field except for Xander Schauffele. We mentioned Scotty. Jordan Spieth making his season debut coming off of injury as well. Rory McIlroy. It's going to be tough, man. The vibes are low after a tough L on Monday night. Going to have to go to Pebble where he doesn't have the best track record. He's in the field. Colin Morikawa, Tweeth's boy Justin Thomas. It's a pretty loaded 80-man field here, fellas. Ross, any guys at the top of the board or even throughout the betting board that just caught your eye right off the rip? I know we're still pretty early into the week. It's Monday. I don't have a single bet made myself, but I was curious where your eyes pondered you as you gandered on this betting board, my friend. Only 80 players.
This is unfortunately where my dumb brain just always goes, that there's a type of player that I know can play this course really well, and it's just going to be dependent on, does that player actually show up and play that way that week? And every fucking time that it's the same answer, that it's our defending champ, that Wyndham Clark is. If Wyndham Clark plays how Wyndham Clark can typically shot shape and play this type of course, Wyndham Clark is going to be one of the best ones out there and in contention on Sunday. But I've also said this in the past about similar courses and layouts with like the Irish Open with the Scottish Open and stuff last year, that those all set up really well, similar to this kind of setup for him. And then one of them he went out and played well. The other one he didn't play so well. It's a give and take. Again, it's kind of where I sit that. But I thought obviously it was only 54 holes last year. It is what it is. But Wyndham Clark is the defending champion of this tournament. He's won here before. And 55 is a great fucking number to have.
I think it was very funny that it's like the similar price range that he was in last year when he entered this tournament. And it's kind of the same narrative around Wyndham Clark. Like, if he plays up to his game, he's capable of winning. It's just we haven't seen it through a 72-hole tournament since he won the United States Open. Obviously, this was closed to 54 holes last year. A lot of people thought that Ludwig was going to chase him down for his first PGA Tour victory as he finished runner-up. But yeah, the 55-1 number is definitely something that stood out. I haven't, like I said, bet anything, but it just continues to be a disrespectful number for Wyndham Clark, which I know a lot of people are not going to be even thinking about jumping towards. If you're not on that bandwagon, you're usually out. If you are, you're someone that usually rides those big numbers with Wyndham Clark. Tweeth, I'm interested, where were you thinking for this betting card to start off your week? Obviously, we got Scotty, Rory, Colin, JT at the top, and Ludwig. There's some big names. Were you thinking top of the board? Where were you thinking to try to recoup some of the losses from the Boston Common Golf Rocks
with the
tonight?
Caveat that I should stop gambling on sports, and I might decide to stop gambling. Might be fitting that this ball frog bet was my last bet ever. No, I got my eye on 3 guys. All 3 ball strikers. All 3 can play in weather if the wind kicks up. Looks like it's going to be nice right now, but you just never know. It's tee time by tee time out there. I like Tommy Fleetwood.
Oh.
I think he's just going to I just cannot believe the man is just going to go his whole career without a PGA Tour win. And I just think, like, if I'm looking for a guy who I think is still going to be in it on the weekend, he's on that very short list of people who I just can't see not being there. So
Also on my list,
Tommy Fleetwood at, I think, like 35 or whatever he's kind of hanging out at. I like Matt McNeely. A lot of people like Matt McNeely this week.
It's a Matt McNeely course, man.
50 or 60 or whatever he's at is not a good price for Matt McNeely, but the dude just plays. I mean, it's like you got to take the home game model where you can get it. And then the other one that I actually think is a good price is Taylor Pendrith.
Yeah.
At like 45 or so, or 50 or whatever he's floating around at in most places. Like, dude, Pendy can freaking hit the ball, and he's not afraid of anyone out there, and weather doesn't bother him. He's got a nice heavy ball. Like, I just like that's like, I think that's where the value is. Love people who are picking Jason Day. It's not for me. I'm gonna take a pass on the Jason Day card this week. I've seen a lot of heat around Jason Day. I heard Russell Henley kicked around. Let me just save you from Russell Henley if you're considering it. Please don't. Heard Sanjay M kicked around. Just unless you're betting like the non-competitive top 5 card for Sanjay, that ain't happening either. So let me just save you from Russell Henley and Sanjay right now. Just take a flyer on Pendrith for me.
I like the Pendy call for sure. Can absolutely mash the golf ball. Hasn't putted well so far this year, but is someone who is historically a good putter on the PGA Tour. I don't think he would be scared of the moment. And one thing I like about Taylor Pendrith as well, grew up in Canada where it gets some colder temperatures this week. He's not afraid of those frigid temps. So I do like the Taylor.
He can layer up.
Yeah, he's not afraid to throw a little sweater on. He's been out there in the
all three of them. Maybe I just pick dudes who look good in sweaters. Those are like the 3 guys that, like, you know, they can throw some cashmere on it if it looks good on them.
One thing I will say about Russell Henley, I don't know if I'm going to get there, but 65-1 to me, like, that's a number that stands out considering this was a guy who was like 18-1 to win the Sony Open a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm out on the Russell Henley.
Sucker money.
You're probably right, man. And the models always love him. He's like always good in an approach. And if you run like any model, he's going to pop up in the top 5. That's how he's been stealing money from people for the last decade.
Right.
I don't know exactly where I'm going. I do know I am going to be betting Bo Hosser though, fellas. Or not. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I'm going to be betting Mark Hubbard, fellas. Excuse me. Mark Hubbard proposed to his wife here. Has gotten incrementally better finishes each of his last 3 starts, was T6 here last year in a signature event. Obviously, it was only through 54 holes, got canceled. West Coast vibes have been pretty good for him to start off the year. Was there going into the final round at the American Express, had to talk some shit on him on Monday morning following that, as him and Patrick Cantlay took forever. I blamed them for that 6.5 hour round and on Sunday to close out the Amex. But I'm going to give my boy Mark Hubbard a chance to redeem himself for that dreadful pace of play. Over 100-1, has good vibes here on this course, always played well on the West Coast. Wedges, don't need driving distance on this type of track. Mark Hubbard over 100-1.
Get a each way bet on Mark Hubbard just to see if he sneaks into that top 5 or so.
Yeah, each way is probably the way to go about it because Lord knows if Mark Hubbard's anywhere in this golf tournament with 9 holes left, he's not going to know how to hit any fairway or any green. Right. But the price tag is pretty good. I also thought, just boys, Nick Dunlap 125-1. I think I just have to bet in every single tournament he's 125-1 in. I just think he's too talented and he knows how to win. Yeah. That you could not say that about a lot of guys in this field.
Caveat: he knows how to win. Hasn't necessarily won against top tier competition.
That is valid.
He knows how to close out a tournament against Eric Van Rooyen if he has to.
Hey, he knows how to close out a tournament. He had Sam Burns and JT on his heels at the Amex.
Don't know if he necessarily knows how to close out a tournament against Scotty and Colin Morikawa if they're like if that's the final couple groups. But all the talent in the world, he's going to do it eventually. So no, 125 might as well be now.
Also won a Pro-Am before. I don't know if that holds any weight whatsoever, but it is a different type of event. It's just a different type of event. I feel like you got to be aware of.
You might have
things are
me.
just gonna move slower.
I'm back in. I'm betting again, guys. We're gonna
I just think you're telling me that Nick Dunlap has the same odds to win this week as Ben Griffin and Eric Cole? That's a lie. It's a lie.
That's a good point.
Not all numbers are equal here, fellas. Tweeth, I also wanted to bring this up because you gave me some flack on social media the other day.
Oh, what'd I do?
About writing up Nico Echeverria.
Yeah, man.
Listen. No, I need to make this really clear. I am not a fan of Nico Echeverria, and I have dubbed him Scumbag Nico here on the show.
Yeah, big bad guy.
Really bad guy. Unfortunately, Tweeth, I thought the world was going to treat me nicely at the Zozo Championship as I had Max Grazerman and Justin Thomas outright, and I'm like, Listen,
Yeah.
Nico Echeverria is a piece of shit. Karma is going to come back and bite this guy.
Yeah.
And karma ended up biting me, and Nico Echeverria wound up winning in the playoffs. So, Tweeth, I promise you, I'm not a fan of Nico Echeverria, man. And if the world worked that way, I'd never bet the guy.
If we've learned nothing else in the last 5 to 10 years of our lives, it's that like the wrong thing is going to happen just astounding majority of the time. And if you might as well make some money on it when good things happen to bad people, a good person on the other end might as well benefit from it. So I don't hate it, but
I didn't feel good doing it. I just hope you know. I did. Just
you got what you deserved.
I responded probably true. And listen, I was more mad about JJ Spawn. I didn't even really want Nico to win that thing. JJ Spawn threw up all over himself. That was awful.
Problem.
Had to make that clear though on the show here real quick. We'll not be betting Scumbag Nico at 190-1 this week. Don't worry about it.
Good.
But any final thoughts from Pebble Beach or anything we haven't brought up here, fellas? I know we're running at an hour 15. Tweeth, appreciate your time as always, but didn't want to leave any thoughts on the table if we had them.
I wanted to just point out that while we've been chatting, Kiz did hit social media and post, love it, let's go Jupiter links. We found our weak link at Max Home.
dude, no, Max doesn't need that right now. He's being body bagged by everyone on the internet. He's playing bad golf. He's got the cliques throwing shade at him. He doesn't even get out there for
Max should just clip that putt that he had from off the green that was 15 feet that went maybe 5 feet. You should just clip that and just post it and reply like, hey, bud, like, not sure you actually contributed, but yeah, go ahead and do your little dance around the ring if you feel like you have to.
Tough times for Max Homa. I tweeted out after the win that Max Homa was Squidward watching all his friends have fun running across.
He'll be back. And like, I really feel like I tweeted the other day something about it was the Spider-Man, two Spider-Mans pointing at each other meme. And it was Justin Rose with his Hanma clubs and Max with his Cobra clubs. And I hope they get those clubs dialed in for him because like, I know there was probably a lot of money on the other end of that deal. And I know they're probably making the exact same iron he was playing at Titleist, just with a different logo on it. But like, if the club isn't what's wrong, something is really wrong with Max. And I hope they figure out how to dial the clubs in because he's got too much talent to be, dead fucking last and withdrawing from tournaments because the wind kicks up. Like, we need Max to figure it out. He's not the guy who needs to get kicked off of Jupiter Links. Let's just say it that way. Season 2, he still needs to be on the team.
And for everything that we've talked about in terms of broadcast issues, players and personalities and whatnot, the PGA Tour needs Max Homa as a personality because he is one of those few players who can be at the upper echelon and win big golf tournaments that you can actually talk to on a microphone and you can relate to and enjoy a conversation. And it's not awkward hair pulling type of stuff. So I really do hope Max Homa comes out of that corner and has a really strong 2025 season, man. He needs it and the PGA Tour needs it as well.
Yep.
All right, fellas. I think that's going to close out this episode of Golf on Tap. Mr. Tweeth Mitchell, thank you very much always for your ideas. Stay killing the internet as you do and the Twitter spaces. Appreciate you for your time, Ross. Thank you for another hour 15 of your time, my friend. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to this episode of Golf on Tap. Quick reminder, go and follow the show for free. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you tune into your podcast. So that way you can listen to every episode. If you're not able to catch us live, go and show some support as well to the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube page. Hit that subscribe button. It's 100% free. Won't cost you anything. And if you ring the bell, turn on those push notifications, you'll get notified when Golf on Tap goes live. Peace out, everyone. Enjoy Pebble Beach. Hopefully it's not a 6.5 hour final round, and we'll have a pretty enticing leaderboard. Until next time, everyone, crack 'em, lock 'em,